Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast is all about our journey into the woods of ourselves, getting to know who we are, where we are, and where we're going in life, so that we can create the life that we want to live. It's about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. It's also about mindset. Our beliefs are such an important part of this journey, and there are so many ways for us to change our mindset so that we can more easily live a life of expansive joy. This podcast is also about going literally into the woods and spending time in nature, and how that can help us on our own personal journey of self-knowledge. Thank you so much for joining us today. Now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 375. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another co-hosted episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. Today we talk about how oracle cards can enrich your outdoor adventures. I don't know how I got the idea to talk about this, but I can't believe we haven't talked about this before. I'm really into outdoor adventures. Joanna's really into oracle cards. I like them too. But this really seemed like the perfect topic for both of us to come together with each of our kind of areas of expertise and passions. So ever since the very first time I walked the South Downs Way 5 years ago, I've been pulling oracle cards before my long distance walks. I pull one card for each day, and sometimes I pull an extra card to represent the overarching theme of the journey. Why do I do this? It helps me to set the intention for each day. It gives me insight into what's going on for me internally. And when the going gets rough physically, it gives me something to focus on as I put one foot in front of the other toward my destination. If you've read my book, Alone on the South Downs Way or Alone on the Ridgeway, you will know that I often use these themes as kind of a mantra to repeat over and over again, or I'll make a little song out of them. That's what I focus on when my body is physically feeling challenged and I need to just keep going. So I find this really, really useful. And it's been different for me every time. So in this episode, what are you going to learn? We talk about what are oracle cards. If you don't know what they are, we talk about what they are and how you can use them. We discuss why you might want to use oracle cards in your outdoor adventures, how oracle cards can enrich your outdoor adventures, particularly that inner journey that goes along with the physical journey of outdoor adventures. We discuss how I use oracle cards before a long-distance walk. We share all the different ways that you can use oracle cards in your adventures. And we include questions that you can ask your oracle card deck before an outdoor adventure, because sometimes people really struggle to know what to ask or what intention to use. So we include all of that. I also have tons of links in the show notes to Joanna's recent blog posts about oracle cards, which I'm sure you will find useful. And that's it for now. So without further ado, here is the episode. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Holly.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Looking forward to today's conversation.
We're talking about oracle cards, which is like my favorite thing to talk about.
And we're talking about outdoor adventures, which is my favorite thing to talk about. So yay! I think this is the perfect combination of like your expertise and my passion.
Oh my goodness, that's true. Except that you also like oracle cards, and I'm not super crazy about outdoor adventures.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so I think for a lot of people, this is going to be like a weird combination of topics, whereas for me, it's totally natural. So let's start out by talking about like what are oracle cards, and this is really your area of expertise because I've been using them for years, but it's your thing.
Right. So oracle cards, they call them like a divination tool. And people think of divination as telling the future, but I want to make clear from the start that it's not. So we're not telling the future here. What we're doing is we're tapping into like intuitive higher wisdom. So the thing is, like, the reason for why you would use oracle cards or any such tool in the first place is that your mind is limited. So when you look at the world and try to problem solve and try to kind of navigate your life just from the headspace, just from the brain, then you're limited because the brain is limited by what it thinks it's true, by what it has seen is possible, rather than everything that's available. And oracle cards are a way to tap into that wider perspective, which for me is really the soul perspective, the perspective of your higher self, of who you truly are. all those kinds of big concepts, and to access wisdom that you wouldn't normally see just with your mind.
Okay. And so how are they different from tarot cards?
So tarot cards are based on a traditional system of symbols. So you have to like learn a system first, I guess. I mean, not everybody learns the system, but they're based, like tarot decks are all based around the same structure of certain suits and certain figures, like certain symbolism. Whereas oracle cards are freer. So you can make an oracle card deck about anything. So there's still cards. Each card still has an image or some words or a phrase or a number. Sometimes just one image, sometimes like a whole picture with lots of little images. It really depends. There are so many different kinds of deck. And I find them easier certainly to start with because they're so free. You can interpret them in all sorts of ways. You don't have to like learn a system that has been in existence for centuries or whatever first.
Yeah, you don't have to understand the archetypes and like their symbolism and all that stuff. Yeah, I get that. So why might someone want to use oracle?
So oracle cards, I think like you would use them in all sorts of situations, and I use them in all sorts of situations, and we'll link to some information on this in the show notes. I use them in my business. I use them like as inspiration for writing. I use them for all sorts of things, for mindset, for personal development, for all kinds of things. Because obviously you would want access to that higher wisdom, to that wider perspective, like in all sorts of things that you're doing, not just in a particular aspect of your life. However, because I am not outdoorsy, outdoor adventures is not one of my examples. Like that is certainly like not an area where I would think to use oracle cards. So why don't you tell us, Holly, why would you use oracle cards in outdoor adventures?
I don't even know how it occurred me to start doing this, but when I did my first long distance walk, which was the South Downs Way, which I first walked in 2015, it's a 100-mile trail in Southeast England. For some reason, I got the idea of pulling one oracle card a day for each day of the walk. And I wrote that all down and I carried it with me. And I kind of used it. It wasn't so much to set an intention, but it was like to get guidance as to like maybe what I should. I don't even remember what my intention was when I pulled the cards, honestly. But it was like the theme for each day. And so the walk was really challenging to me because I hadn't done a walk like that before. And so I kind of used the daily theme from the oracle cards to reflect on. And I used it as like a mantra in many situations. Like when the going got tough, I just repeated that phrase from the card over and over in my head. Sometimes I'd make a song out of it. I'd like walk along singing it out loud. And it just kind of kept me going. And I noticed that each theme kind of coincided with what was going on for me that day. So it was like it served as kind of like a thing to focus on when things were physically tough, and also guidance as to like what was going on for me. Yeah, and so I've kind of kept up the tradition since then. The walks have been getting easier for me physically, so I haven't used it as much as like that laser focus mantra thing to keep my mind busy, as much as just kind of what's going to be going on for me during this walk from an inner perspective.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because although I haven't used oracle cards in this way for outdoor adventures, mostly because I don't have any outdoor adventures, I have used them, of course, and you have as well for the year or for the month or for the day. So you pull a card per month or you pull a card per day. And it works in the same way, right? It just gives you insight. I think that's what I really liked about what you just said, Holly, like insight into what's going on internally.
Yeah.
Guidance in terms of like, again, it's not like telling the future about what's going to be going on for you, although I guess it could be used in that way in a certain sense now that I'm thinking about it. But okay, but that's a different conversation. Maybe we should talk about that some other time. But it's really like insight into your internal world, because one day you might feel like totally like on top of the world, and one day you might not, and you might, I don't know, like presumably, especially on your kinds of outdoor adventures or this particular kind where you're walking on your own for an extended period of time, so like days on end, I would imagine that like old stuff comes up because you'd suddenly remember a memory or a person or something you said or something you regretted. I don't know, like there must be like some kind of transformation involved, because you like making space for like this unconscious to come up, to rise up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And because I'm alone, it's like I'm alone with my head. I don't listen to music. I don't listen to podcasts, so I don't have that distraction. I don't have other people to distract me. It's like me and my head and my body, which is kind of aching and going through something challenging. So it really does. It like brings things up to the surface for you to look at. It brings up fears. It brings up all kinds of stuff. And you have no choice but to look at them because there's no distraction.
Wow. So your outdoor adventures like are really transformation. Like that scares me. Like I will go for a walk because I have to like stay relatively healthy. I will always be listening to music or a podcast or a book. Like I don't even remember, or I'll be with someone, right? Like, or I'll be with my husband or my son. I don't remember the last time I went for a walk without anything. And that really like freaks me out because I'm like, I have this like fear of getting bored, I think, and this like resistance to being bored and just the idea of just being me and my head and in that space outside. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder if that's why a lot of people avoid experiences like this. I was just talking to someone in my life when I came back from the walk and she was like, you did that on your own? She was like, I could never do that. I couldn't stand my own company for that long.
I don't think it's not so much that, like, I quite like my own company. I think I'm pretty awesome. But I think it's just, I don't know, like sometimes my head gets so crazy and like I think about things over and over again. I'm an overthinker and an overanalyzer and all those kinds of things. And so it's not a particularly pleasant prospect to spend time just with all those thoughts going round and round and round and round. Like perhaps if it was quieter in there, I might consider it. So like, is your mind always quiet or does it quiet down because you take yourself through this process, do you think?
I think my mind is generally quiet. I mean, I don't tend to like ruminate on worries or thoughts or things that are like giving me anxiety. But things do come up when I'm walking, and because I don't have those distractions, like I can kind of get a little obsessed with them in a way that I wouldn't in my normal daily life when I'm doing stuff and I have other distractions. Like I'm happy to talk about, I was texting with you in the Master Gut that one day where I saw that guy. So I was walking, I think this is the second day of my walk. And interesting, the theme for that day was that the first day or the second day? Yeah, it was antagonism, conflict, disharmony. And that was the theme for the day. I remember the cards when I pulled them for this walk, they scared me. I didn't like them. They weren't like fun and beautiful. They were like challenging. So that was that day's card. And I was walking alone as I do. And I crossed paths with this guy and he kept walking behind me. And then he must have turned around and started coming back my way because about 10 minutes later, I was really surprised to see him right behind me. And so that weirded me out. So I slowed down, let him pass me. He got up this hill. I saw him get to the top of this hill and kind of pause and look around like he was looking at the view, but then like kind of also looking downhill. And then that started to freak me out even more. And so I was just like on high alert for like safety reasons. And like every time I stopped to take a break, I was like looking over my shoulder. Because I lost track of him. I didn't know where he was. Like the anxiety started building up. And I remember texting you guys in the Master Gut in the WhatsApp group saying like, this is going on for me. And then I didn't see him for hours. And then at the very end of the day, as I was like half an hour from my destination for that night, he crossed paths with me coming from the opposite direction. And I was like, what is this guy doing? He's like walking back and forth on the same trail, like in the same segment. Like who walks like that? Like, why is he walking back and forth? Anyway, so it freaked me out, but I was like almost to my destination and I thought, okay, well, at least I'm done for the day. But then the following day I was also worried. I was like, am I going to see this guy again? Like, what is he even doing? Like, what is he? And that was something that like caused me anxiety. And yeah, so sometimes intrusive thoughts happen. And then I ruminate on them. Like the whole time I was thinking, I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to respond if he does this? How am I going to respond if he does that? How am I going to respond if I see him again? And every time I saw him, I would just try to be like casually like, hey again. Hi there. But in my head, I was like, oh my God, it's the guy again.
Hi there. I've alerted everybody I know to where I am, that I've seen you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, exactly. Saw the guy again, texting.
The words on your card were what? Disharmony and what?
Antagonism, conflict, and disharmony.
So that experience must have helped you to somehow like internally, I guess, like resolve something around conflict, perhaps with the masculine, perhaps with something like the fear. So like you couldn't have guessed from that card that that's what would happen, obviously. But I mean, I think we need to say that for this particular walk, you had set a very strong intention.
Yes.
Right? You had set the intention that by the end of the walk, your like transformation into the next identity will have been complete.
Yes.
Will be complete.
Yes.
So that's another kind of way, I suppose, that wasn't Oracle card related, but of course it's coming from that same kind of wider perspective place. But when you set an intention like that, I think it kind of follows that like the cards you get aren't going to be like gratitude and love and money.
Sunflowers.
So like, because you probably like put a whole load of like really deep transformation stuff into the container of the walk, which was very, I mean, small. It was a small container. It wasn't like 6 months, right?
Yeah. It was a week. Yeah. And interestingly, the next day I was still like aware of who I was crossing paths with on the trail. And the card for that day was Oak, which was wisdom, masculinity, and strength. So every time that guy would pop into my head and I'd be like, what if I see that guy? I would repeat like a mantra, those words. I'd be like, wisdom, masculinity, strength, wisdom, masculinity, strength. And I would just repeat those over and over. I would be like, that's what the man could represent. Like, that's what masculinity.
As you're talking, like for me, it's really clear that the transformation was to heal, to make peace with the masculinity in you and approach it not as dangerous part of yourself, but a wise and strong part of yourself. Yeah. And it's so interesting because just before this podcast, this recording, we were talking about like physical strength and how you have reframed things as you're kind of reframed your health journey as a journey more into being strong, like physically strong. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
That was part of your transformation.
It is. And that's the thing. Like sometimes it's really straightforward because I include these oracle cards in my books when I write my book about my journey. I've gotten really good feedback from some people about that. Like some people really like the fact that I include that because it's really unique. But I don't always understand how the theme from the oracle card corresponds to my journey and that day. Sometimes it takes weeks or months after the experience. And sometimes it takes like talking to someone else like you. Like now it's kind of falling into place, making more sense to me. Like the following day, which was plantain, was innocence, naivete, unaware. And that was the day I heard that car accident. I heard someone get hit by a car at the very end of my journey. And this was a rough, I mean, like overall, like it was a really good experience, but like some big stuff happened internally. I mean, all day long.
But you wanted it to.
Yes. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Be careful what you ask for.
Like the reason that intention was set was that you were feeling a little bit impatient for that transformation to be over, to be like out of the messy middle in the new identity and reality already. Yeah. And so this was suggested and you said yes to it. And of course, like it just intensifies it because it puts a whole load of transformation into a shorter period of time.
Exactly.
But now it's done.
It's, actually, I feel a lot more kind of grounded and solidified in that. So let's go a little bit more into that. So like when you're going on an adventure, you can also do what I did and set an intention for what kind of inner transformation you're going to experience.
I just remembered you also set an intention a long time ago to meet your guides, didn't you?
Yeah. So on the first time I walked the Ridgeway, that was when those guides showed up, the Richards, and they asked me to channel them. So the last time I did the Ridgeway, I did it in 8 days. And so there were 4 Richards. No, it was 9 days. Oh my God. Yeah. So it was 8 days plus 1 at the start. And so they said, channel each of us for 4 days, take a break, and then the next 4 days, channel each of us. And so that was also in the book. So my channeling was a big part of that book, which is why a lot of people didn't like that book because they thought they were buying a walking book and they got a walking book with spirit guides. And a lot of people didn't like that. So the book doesn't have very good reviews.
Well, too bad. You know, I think like that's kind of the whole idea of a richer life. Like, yeah, you can just go for a walk and like not let any of this other stuff in. But kind of limiting yourself to only what you think is current physical reality. The fact is that even if we don't really quite understand it, there's a lot more out there. And by letting it in, you will have a more meaningful, satisfying, richer life experience. Like this isn't just about your outdoor walk, right?
Yeah.
Like it's about your life experience. So I would think that aspect of your book, or those aspects of your books, are actually like the gold, right? Because anybody can go out and like walk and then write it up, but you're like going through personal transformation. That's very brave, like to be open to that possibility, to be open to what's possible. And it's brave to share it too, because it's not just spirit guides, like it's your inner world.
Yeah. And I think that's
you're
why
sharing your own like inner transformation.
Yeah, I get really good feedback. Like lately I've been hearing from readers who have been like, I love that you share that inner journey in addition to the physical walk. And thank you for being so open about that, because it's really interesting. And so that's kind of confirmation to me that this is useful for people. And I think it helps people see that like when you decide to do a week-long walk or longer, like it's not just about the physical challenge of walking 100 miles. There's a lot that goes on internally. And I think that the more aware you are of that, the richer your journey.
That goes for life as well as the walk, right?
Absolutely.
Like that, and I think that's important. Like that, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything.
Yeah.
So if you allow yourself to have a richer experience on your walk, you also allow yourself to have a richer experience in life. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, I think I'm going to have to allow myself to have a richer experience in outdoor adventures.
Yeah, but outdoor adventures mean different things to different people. And this is something that I keep trying to get across, like on my podcast and in my blog post, but especially on the podcast, is I love kickboxing. I love now trail running, getting back into running. I love walking for 8 days in a row on my own, but that could be different for other people. Other people might like cycling. Other people might like brief stroll in the park. Other people might like, I don't know, climbing. It's going to be different for everyone. I think the trick is to find your joy in nature and what your outdoor adventure of choice is. And maybe redefine adventure into something, a broader perspective. Like it doesn't have to be something like a huge physical challenge. It could just be like going to a new park or a new place in your, whatever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And like, I was actually thinking about this yesterday when I went for my obligatory daily walk in the woods here, that I don't like woods. Like, it's all right. It's all right. But when I like to walk is when there's open space. And I don't know if you remember when we went to Avebury together last. Yeah. When we did that walk, we walked around the area and there was one bit of it. There was just space everywhere. Like, do you remember that? This trail, and there was just everywhere you looked around you, there was space. I loved it. I could have walked that for ages, and we had to go back to where the people were and all that. And I was thinking yesterday about this because I wasn't really super enjoying the woods. I know I needed to get out, and that's what's available to me at the moment. But where we're moving, so we're moving to Ireland quite soon now. That's one of the things I'm really, really looking forward to, is that we're going to be so close to the Connemara National Park, which is like all walks like that, like it's walks and everywhere you look, there's space. Like there's nothing on the horizon. It's just empty. And that I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, and that's the western half of the Ridgeway is very much like that. That's one of the things that I love. I prefer the western half. I love the whole Ridgeway, but the western half is really special to me because you're walking along the top of the ridge and you look in both directions and all you see is like rolling hills of like farmland. So you've got like green and gold and all these different shades of like colors, but it's all just open farmland. And sometimes like way off in the distance, you might see like a village or a town, but like it's generally just open, broad views. And that just feels so expansive to me. And I love that. Like that kind of view really lights me up. I love the woods. I love the trees. I couldn't live in a place without lots of trees, but I also love those expansive views.
Yeah, I don't know why that appeals to me, but I see myself like maybe pulling a card and going on a walk. There, I wouldn't want a distraction. Like I wouldn't want a podcast or anything. I would want to just appreciate the space. And the same, like, this is not like exercise, but one of the things I really love is the wild beaches in Ireland. And there we've done this several times, where like my husband and my son, they go like walking on the little rocks and finding crabs in the rock pools and whatever else. And I just sit down with a journal, and there I will pull a card and I'll journal on whatever the card says. For me, that's really, really like nourishing to be kind of in the wilderness in terms of like, not the wilderness, like the jungle, but like
you're in the
so
outdoors.
Close. Yeah. And like by this rough-ish sea, like it's not the Mediterranean. I don't know, like it's alive. It feels alive.
Yeah, it feels like wild and raw and like nature.
Yeah. And then, so like tapping into that with oracle cards or any other tool that kind of connects me with that wider part of my wisdom, like that's a really beautiful, beautiful experience. And I've never like worked with intention in that way, but I have certainly asked for guidance in those moments during those times. And that's just been amazing. The stuff I channel when one of those beaches, it's incredible.
Yay! So that's a whole different type of outdoor adventure. Like you're getting outdoors, you're connecting with nature, you're connecting with oracle cards, you're connecting with that higher wisdom in a very different way. And that's great.
Yeah, so you can use oracle cards in all sorts of ways, right? To set an intention. You don't need oracle cards to set an intention. Like if you want some kind of transformation to happen over the course of your adventure, then you can do that. But an intention is nice as well. Like sometimes you just don't know like what you should focus on or what your next transformation should be. So then it's nice to use something like an oracle card that will help you, like give you a different perspective that doesn't come from the logical mind, right? I really love like the pulling a card for each day. But I don't know how many people will do multi-day outdoor adventures either. But you can use that system for anything, really. Yeah. I mean, pull a card for the week and then see like how it guides you, right? Yeah. Like that's what I do with the weekly and monthly messages that I channel from my guide team, Avalon. Like they're meant to guide you through the course of the week, and they're meant to be like inspiration on something, like you said, like something to fall back on. Yeah. It's like if you're having a crappy week and you go back to the message, oh yeah, but the message said this. So how can I look at what's happening through the lens of this?
Yes.
Right? And then it makes maybe easier to navigate through in a way that is kind of more grounded and confident and proactive rather than like reactive stuff being thrown at.
Yeah. And I think for people that do find it difficult to be on their own out in nature when they go on a walk without music, without podcasts, I think that pulling an oracle card could maybe make that possible for you. Like it could, give people something to focus on. Like you can repeat it like a mantra like I would do when the going got tough, or just use it to like refocus your thoughts into something. So, okay, let's go through the practical thing of pulling an oracle card, because it's not like you just pick up a deck and grab a card. Like you have to ask a question or set an intention. So like what I would say is, what do I need to be focused on today on my walk? Or what is the theme for this day of my walk? Or what other questions could you ask when pulling the card for like a walk?
My God, there's so many for a walk. Anything really. I mean, I don't think it has to be even that like general. You could even ask a question that your mind is currently busy with. So even something like, how do I invite in more abundance? Yeah. How do I make more money in like normal language, right? Like, how do I make more money? And pull an oracle card and just kind of let the answer ruminate to allow inspiration to come to you. So like there's a lot of really, really successful people who say that their secret weapon is a daily walk, where their mind like kind of put into order all the ideas and all the thoughts that they have, and they always come out with extra inspiration or an answer. Like because my mind is so busy, that doesn't work for me. But I wonder if I focused, like if I asked a question, pulled an oracle card for an answer, and then ruminated on that, how that answer could be my answer. Like, what would that mean? I'd be curious to try that actually. Yeah. If you have trouble coming up with a question, well, I have like a mega guide of like 113 possible questions and all sorts of things. And that we'll link to in the show notes as well. Because I know that this is something that people can tend to struggle with. And your question needs to be kind of be coming from the right space, like a powerful space, rather than a please solve this for me space.
Yeah, exactly. And not from telling the future kind of space.
Yeah, indeed. So then you ask a question, you pull a card, and then like you just see what on the card resonates with you. And don't overthink it. And then usually I would journal on that answer and how it pertains to the question. But if we're talking about outdoor adventures, you just take that answer with you with the intention that by the end of your walk, you'll understand how that answer is actually the perfect answer to your question and will actually lead you to the perfect next step.
And trust that you've got the right card, even if you don't like the card. I did not like the cards I pulled for this walk, and it scared the shit out of me. Also, there were a few years ago, at the end of each year, I pull 12 cards for the following year as a theme and as guidance, and then I pull a 13th card for the overarching theme of the year. And this one year, I think it was like October, November, I did not like the card that I got for that month. It scared the shit out of me. So I was like, no. And I put it back, and I pulled another one. And the new one was like really just totally off. It was like making music. And I was like, I am the least musical person. I don't make music. Like, what the hell is this? Like, it was so obvious that the card wasn't for me. I was like, fuck you, Oracle cards. Like, I don't want that either, because that's obvious that you're like, nah, the first one was the right one. And then I forgot about it. And then the year came, the months happened. I got to that month with the card, the fucking making music card, and the original theme happened. And it was rough. But the Oracle cards, like, called it. Like, that was the theme for the month. Yeah. That was the theme I was working on. And, you know.
Yeah, you could have just like signed up for some piano lessons and made that music card come true.
Or singing lessons or something, yeah. But it was so funny because when I denied that first card and I pulled the second card, it was like so obvious that it wasn't right. You know, it was so obvious that the deck was like, no.
Yeah. So don't do that.
Yeah.
Practice trusting.
Don't do as I do.
Practice trusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And practice trusting that like you can handle whatever comes up. I mean, even when we have a difficult time internally, there's growth in that. So like that day where I was like crossing paths with this guy all day and like freaking out about it, you know, what does that highlight? That highlights the fact that yes, I am willing to go on these 100-mile walks on my own, but I do have fears about it sometimes. I do still get a little paranoid when I see someone behaving strangely, especially a man who's behaving strangely. So, you know, and this poor guy was just having an innocent walk back and forth on the trail, and I'm like, what is wrong with him? What are his intentions?
So. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like also we can fall into the trap of assuming that of like trying to guess how that theme is going to play out. Yeah. And let me tell you that you'll never in your entire life be able to guess how the theme is. Like, don't even waste your time. Like, I have stopped doing that. Like, I just go, oh, okay, that's the message. And then we see like the messages that I pull for that I channel for the month and the week. Like, I mean, sometimes I come to Thursday and I'm like, oh, that's how it's playing out. I mean, it's actually happening to me this week, and I could have never guessed, that this is the way the message would play out. And it's just, there's no kind of point guessing whether the internal transformation will be positive or negative or hard or easy or whatever, because you just won't be able to tell before you actually go through it. And I think like you can be surprised at how some of the transformation is actually quite easy to go through, or like the way in which the lesson shows up is actually quite delightful. Whereas it could, I mean, obviously any lesson can show up in any multitude of ways. But sometimes it is in a nice way. So like, there's just no point doing that, right? Like, let's not, it's like in tarot, is it the Tower card that means that like your whole life is crumbling? Like that's like the major symbolism. People are always really scared of getting that card. I think it's that one. There's one that's like really, I mean, people are always really scared to get it. Or like the death card. People are always really like, does that mean I'm gonna die? And it's not like it's symbolic of something, right? So like a death card can be death, sure, like it's possible, you in theory, but it could, it might just be an ending. So something's ending, so that's something new can begin.
But that's also
like
scary.
that's what death is as well.
Yeah.
It can be, but it might not be.
Yeah.
Like, so it kind of depends what it is that's ending, and it doesn't have to be scary. So I think I think we need to come at it from or try to come at it from a neutral perspective. And neutral is very difficult, but what is possible, I think, is curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So to come at it from a point of curiosity and be like, I wonder how this can play out.
Yeah.
In a delightful way.
Yeah, exactly. Being open and curious to see what it is. Yeah, good. So, I think that's all I have to say on the topic.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was really fun. If anybody has any questions about certainly the Oracle cards piece, not about outdoor adventures, then feel free to PM me on any of the social media.
And you also have a blog post with a list of your favorite Oracle cards, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have several Oracle cards related blog posts, and the latest one is a list of not just my favorite Oracle card decks, but most beautiful and most the ones that I feel get really good answers and best ones for beginners and yeah, and pretty much all of them except for I only included 2 that I don't actually own. So the rest of them I actually own and work with regularly. So and I'll likely, because I have a slight obsession with Oracle cards, I'll likely add to it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll link to that. And if you have any questions, then do let me know.
Yeah, perfect. All right. And let me know if you have any questions about outdoor adventures and how to navigate the inner journey of your outdoor time. Because I think that's one of the richest parts. It's you're challenging yourself physically, but you're also going through internal transformation. Yay!
Very cool. I never really thought of it that way. So thank you, Holly, for that.
All right. So if you have any questions, you can email Joanna at...
No email, just PM or DM across social media, please.
All right. And then you can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me online and get in touch there. Thank you for listening. Happy adventuring.
See you later.
I hope you found that interesting and useful. Please drop me a line. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Please also let me know if you have any ideas for topics or things you would like me to talk about here on this podcast, with Joanna, with someone else. I love getting feedback from listeners and knowing what you want me to talk about or write about on the blog. That's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/375 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.